Holy shit. What the fuck? Wow. That's really gotta be stirred. Holy shit.
Greetings and welcome to part 2 of the tutorial series on the Leo Jaymz AL DIY guitar kit and the Oxford Guitar Supply nitrocellulose lacquer system. Step 2 is grain filling. So after you have completed initial sanding of the body and neck with 320, you're going to want to do a grain fill. Now, if your guitar is made of a wood like maple, adler, or basswood, you might not need to do this. Now, if your guitar is swamp ash, or particularly this guitar, both the body and the neck are mahogany wood. Mahogany is a porous wood, and if you don't do a grain fill, the nitrocellulose lacquer is going to seep into the wood and create a texture. And it's going to give you a very rough look, maybe even a very vintage look that might be desirable for some people, but I don't want that to happen. I want a very clean look, like new, very clean look, and I want this guitar to last for a long time, so I don't want to risk any of the paint seeping into the wood and ruining the finish that I'm about to spend hours and hours creating.
All right, it's looking sweet. So this has been sanded twice with 320 at this point. It's dry from the mineral spirits. I made sure I did round off any kind of exposed edges. I rounded off just to make it look extra finished. And I sanded inside the cavities a little bit just to make sure the paint looks decent in there, but most of that, it's not exposed, or you won't really see it. But this is looking really good. It feels nice and smooth, and I think it's time to do the grain fill. So I'm going to start with the neck.
Oxford Supply offers an oil-based grain filler. I'm using just a natural color grain filler because I'm going to be using a white primer to cover this anyway. So it's really not going to matter what color the grain filler is. But if you were using a transparent color or maybe another kind of dye or a stain, and they offer tinted grain fillers, so you could alter your color that way as well. For my application, the color of the grain filler is not going to matter because I'm using a white primer anyway, and it's just going to get covered up. Here I'm stirring the grain filler. It separates really easily, and I actually broke my stick initially, so I ended up using a screwdriver to have to stir this stuff. It's really difficult to stir. You want to get it mixed up properly, and they say it should have the consistency of paste. Mine was a little bit more watery than paste. They say you can even, if it's too thick, you can add mineral spirits, but mine seemed to be a good consistency here. So I'm using an old paintbrush to apply it, and I'm also just using my hands with rubber gloves to massage the grain filler into the wood. You want to get the wood coated as much as possible, and you're filling the pores and the gaps, and you want that grain filler, deep inside the wood pores of the guitar. So I'm painting on with a brush and then massaging it in with my hands to cover as much of the surface as I can. Once it starts to dry, it starts to look pasty and flake off. It's pretty obvious to see. This happened relatively quickly. Now, I guess if you were in different temperature conditions, it was probably about 60 degrees in my garage when I was doing this, but maybe if it was warmer or more humid or whatnot, the drying time might change, but it happened relatively quickly. in about 5 to 10 minutes, the grain filler got like paste on the guitar, and I continued to massage it in. But at a certain point, once it started to dry and flake off, I just took an old credit card, and you want to scrape across the grain because you're filling in those pores. So you're scraping across the grain, kind of forcing the grain filler into the wood. It's like you're almost like petrifying the wood. So you're scraping all that excess off, forcing it down into the wood. I did that over the entire guitar, front, back, sides, a little bit even in the neck pocket and in the cavities where I could. Anywhere that paint is going to go and be exposed. I did the entire neck of the guitar, the headstock. The neck of the guitar was easier to work in kind of with my fingers. Now I did this whole grain fill process 3 times on this body. 1, I wanted to make sure that I was doing it right. And 2, I wanted to make sure I had complete coverage in every area, of the wood that I can. So I did it 3 times. Each time I completed it, I let it dry overnight, came back the next day, did the grain fill again, scraped it off, let it dry overnight. However, each time you do complete it, after you scrape off your shavings and scrape away the grain fill, I just took an old t-shirt, soft cloth cotton t-shirt, and buffed it down, and it creates a really nice look. Like the wood really starts to look really nice and really cool at this point. It's very smooth, it smells great, feels great in your hand. It has a nice neutral color, gave it a really nice shine, a really nice look to it. Like I felt bad even painting over it at this point, but it looks so good. But it's going to be really smooth and glossy, and that's it. We're going to let that dry overnight. And when you're done and you're happy and confident that you've done the grain fill to the best of your ability, let it dry overnight or even an additional day. And the next step, and this is the next video that we're going to get to, is you're just going to gently sand and scuff the surface with 400 grit sandpaper. And the next step is a primer coating. And so tune in for part 3, and we're going to be painting a white primer, nitrocellulose lacquer primer coat over the entire guitar. It's going to be really cool. So really excited about this. Stay tuned. Check out part 3. Thanks for watching, folks. Let's keep on rocking.